let me tell you a story about a young man named Forrest Gump. And when he was a kid, he had a spine as crooked as a politician. But he wore these magic shoes that his mama told him would take him anywhere. But one time Forrest was being bullied so bad that his good friend Jenny just told him to run. And that was the day that Forrest realized that he could run like the wind blows. One day Forrest was running so fast, he ran right on through the University of Alabama's practice. And the coaches realized that he might be useful to the team someday. So they offered him a scholarship right then and there. Which brings us to today, as we follow Forrest Gump during his time at Alabama on his road to glory. Before every player enters college, they all get to equip their mental ability. But you see, Forrest here wasn't always the sharpest tool in the shed, if you know what I mean. So he doesn't get one quite yet. But they brought Forrest Gump out to their next practice. And the coaches had realized that Forrest here, well, he might be better than they actually thought. Because although he didn't seem to be all there mentally, he had speed like they've never seen before. I mean, he was the fastest man on the field by far. And that actually makes sense considering the time that Forrest outran a truck. But going into his first game against Western Kentucky, Forrest was still 4th on the depth chart. So Forrest knew that unless it was on kick return, he wasn't going to play much this game. And he sure didn't play much this week. Or the next week. You see, the coaches felt like although Forrest was really fast, he was still too dumb to even know how to play football. So they didn't feel comfortable putting Forrest in any real game situations quite yet. But Forrest was still working real hard at practice. So one day he earned himself the opportunity to become the 3rd running back on the depth chart. And just like that, over the course of a few drills, Forrest had done a great job impressing the coaches and proving that he deserves to move up. And although Forrest did earn a little bit of a promotion, he didn't get to play much at all in his next game against Tennessee. And Forrest was actually okay with it, because he was happy to just be playing football at all. But he didn't know the coaches had something bigger planned for him, because as soon as the game ended, they offered him an opportunity to become the 2nd string running back. And just like that, Forrest was doing things that the coaches knew the other players just couldn't do. He was showing off just pure raw speed and athleticism. And by the end of the day, Forrest had secured himself the number 2 spot and guaranteed playing time in his next game against LSU. And yeah, like I said, Forrest isn't the brightest bulb in the socket. As you can see here, he's celebrating with the wrong team. The coach told Forrest that when they get back on offense, he's going to set Forrest up with a swing pass, and all he has to do is just run. And well, Forrest definitely ran alright, because on his very first time ever touching the ball in a real football game, Forrest took it all the way down the sideline for a touchdown. And I think the Alabama coaches knew right then and there that they had something special on their hands. Because although Forrest didn't play too much throughout the rest of this game, they did run that same swing pass to Forrest a few more times, and Forrest just kept doing a great job cutting upfield and getting big yardage. And after Forrest did his thing in a 42-21 Alabama victory, the coaches decided that it was time to give Forrest the opportunity to become the number 1 halfback for the University of Alabama. And besides this spinning wheel thing, there wasn't really no challenge for Forrest, because he would do exactly what he did in previous competitions and take this one with ease. And now that Bama was about to go up against the UGF Pandas, the Bama coaches knew that this was the perfect game to get Forrest comfortable with his new starting position.
Thanks to the Alabama Crimson Tide. We have a ranked versus unranked battle coming up here, and you know how chaos can ensue if they start smelling an upset.
Alabama started this game on offense, getting down the field pretty quickly through the air.
Force the defense to adjust. Grabbed in the backfield, it's Haynes.
Even on 2nd down here, they turned a short catch into a 20-plus yard pickup. Now in the red zone, Alabama hands the ball off to Forrest, and he does a good job picking up a few yards before trying to bounce the ball outside and fumbling the ball on the very first carry of his career. And the home fans there at Bama were not happy about it. But it was okay, because they got the ball right back and put the ball right back in Forrest's hands to try to get him going. And he did a great job helping this offense drive down the field, especially here on 2nd and goal, where they hand the ball off to him for his first rushing touchdown of his career. But Forrest wasn't done there, because they put him out at receiver, and the quarterback actually threw him the ball, and he ran it in for his 2nd touchdown of the game. And right when you think Forrest had completely redeemed himself for that first mistake, he makes another mistake here and fumbles the ball again on first down. But luckily, Bama got the ball right back. Forrest had done his part helping Bama get down the field again. And Bama would eventually throw it in for another touchdown. And honestly, I don't think Bama really needed Forrest for this game because they could score through the air whenever they wanted to.
Looking deep down the right side. Got it. Into the end zone.
But there was this one play right before halftime where one of the coaches told Forrest to run the clock out. But Forrest didn't quite know what that meant, so he just kept on running.
20, he's got space. Off he goes. The 40. At the 20. Touchdown, Crimson Tide. And once he found open space, the
Oh,
band might
see that little dance there? That's that same dance Forrest used to do when he had magic shoes. And would you believe that Forrest Gump actually inspired Elvis Presley to do that same dance when he got big? Anyway, by the end of the third quarter, the Crimson Tide were destroying the Pandas. And they were trying to get Forrest to run some of this clock, but he kept running into the end zone. And they ran Forrest until they literally couldn't no more, and then sat him out till the end of the game. And even with sitting out the majority of the fourth quarter, Forrest had found a way to run for over 300 yards that day with 5 total touchdowns. And after the game, Forrest actually got his first NIL deal where all he has to do is just sign some autographs. Now his mama never taught him how to sign no autographs, but he decided to do it anyway, because he figured he could just copy someone else's autograph. Now Forrest didn't know if 300 yards was a lot, so he was surprised when he won SEC and National Offensive Player of the Week. And he was pretty excited to go on the road against Oklahoma and try to do it again.
And wow, do we have a fun one here ahead. A top 10 team walking into the snake pit of an environment just trying to get out alive. This will be fun, as we'll see the number 8 team in the country, the Alabama Crimson Tide, taking on the 11th ranked team, the Oklahoma Sooners.
Forrest started out the game slow by getting stopped in the backfield on the very first play. But then he started to pick it up, gaining big chunks of yardage and first down. Forrest was becoming such a big threat on the ground that somewhere around midfield, the defense had bit it a little bit too hard and allowed a wide open touchdown over the top. And that's where Forrest actually realized that his quarterback is really good, because he threw another touchdown on the very first play of the next drive. Bama had found themselves backed up on their own one, and it wasn't looking good for him after Forrest got stopped early on first down. But on the very next play, Forrest started thinking about something his good friend Jenny once told him. And before you could blink, Forrest Gump was running down the sideline for a 99-yard touchdown.
Past the 20. No stopping and takes it all the way. Touchdown, Crimson Tide.
And I remember Coach had to stop for a second and make sure he wasn't dreaming or something, because he couldn't believe that Forrest had just done that. But it was definitely no dream, because Forrest was getting stopped in the backfield his next drive. But Forrest Gump has always been real good about moving on to the next play. And he definitely showed it here, because he took this ball all the way down the field for a dang near 70-yard touchdown.
And he'll make it in for the score. Touchdown.
There were times where Forrest would get confused and start doing his own thing. But Bama really is the best place for Forrest, because they still seem pretty good when he don't do nothing anyway.
Back to throw again. Catch made.
And they would keep proving that, because time after time, the quarterback just keeps throwing touchdowns way down the field.
He's a wide open receiver, complete. Oh, and he breaks free. It's a foot race. Touchdown, Tide. And the route.
But Forrest would definitely get his fair share of carries this game,
Looks like Alabama goal.
even rushing in for another touchdown in the second half.
Flex the ground game here. Running back takes the handoff. Touchdown, Crimson Tide.
And with such a big lead, they just continued to run Forrest into the ground until once again he just couldn't no more. And Forrest had actually found a way to run for more yards than he did the previous week. Well, Forrest was starting to really like football, so he was excited to get into his next game against Auburn. They tried telling Forrest that it was called the Iron Bowl, but he kept saying that he likes wooden bowls better.
The Alabama Crimson Tide. game of the season for one team, it is more importantly a celebration, Senior Day. As we'll see a squad from the SEC, the Auburn Tigers, taking on the third.
Alabama really did not start this game off too hot.
From the gun, running back on the move. Real moved into plus territory.
Because on the first drive, they got stopped on 4th and 1 for a turnover on downs.
They stop him short of the marker and they'll turn it over on down.
But Forrest would show up big on the next drive. Because on 3rd and 14, Forrest runs a route over the middle, and the quarterback delivers the ball to him, and Forrest goes and runs for a first down. And later in the drive, the Bama quarterback found another receiver open, and he ran down the field for a touchdown. And that Auburn defense was real tough on Forrest this game. Especially after seeing what he did to the previous two teams, it seems like Auburn is trying to blitz almost every play. So they try to get Forrest to run a route over the middle, and even that can't really get him open. Now, Forrest didn't do a lot of blocking, but when he did a real good job of making sure ain't nobody touched his quarterback, and this time, it led to a big completion. And the quarterback thanked Forrest for that by getting him the ball here on this play, where Forrest is able to bring the ball inside the 5-yard line. And Bama really just rewarded Forrest for his effort because they let him rush the ball in for a touchdown. And with Auburn continuing to score, Bama knows they need somebody to step up and continue to make plays. And here on this play, Forrest actually abandons his route and finds an open space to get upfield for a first down. And on the very next play, nobody sees Forrest booty butt cheeks naked in the back of the end zone, and he gets open for a touchdown. Still down 7, Forrest thinks that if he could find a way to get down the field here, maybe Bama could put up some points, even if it's just a field goal. And he gets down the field, but he doesn't see that there's no time left, so he's celebrating for no reason. After halftime, Bama got themselves in the 3rd down and 15 before they had to kick a field goal. And after Auburn gets one of their own, the Bama coaches realize that if they can just get Forrest in open space, maybe they can get him down the field for a touchdown. And I bet them coaches felt like a genius because that's exactly what Forrest did. And they continued to try to stretch the field to get Forrest in open space, and it worked. And then Bama did a great job blocking on this play and allowing Forrest to get down the field and into the end zone for another touchdown to take the lead. And after going for 2, I know their quarterback wished he just threw it because Forrest gets stopped right in the backfield on this RPO. Now down 3, Forrest is doing as much as he can to try to help the team get down the field. But after failing to get the first on this 3rd down attempt, the coach decides to punt it on 4th and 1, and that just ended up with Alabama never even getting the ball back, and they ended up losing this Iron Bowl. He ended up telling coach that he might have ran a little harder if he was competing for a wooden bowl, but either way, Alabama takes this loss. And after the game, this girl had asked Forrest if he wanted to come to a party, but he said no thank you because he wanted to visit his friend Jenny. Forrest didn't know that the regular season had ended, so he was surprised to see that there were some awards being given out. He saw that Cameron Rising from Utah won the Heisman, but Forrest had found out that he had won some awards too. First Team All-SEC, Freshman All-SEC, and First Team All-American. But on top of that, Alabama made the college football playoffs, and they are going to face off against the Heisman winner Cameron Rising at Utah. And as you can see, Forrest had a pretty crazy season on the ground, going for 776 yards and 9 touchdowns while averaging 155 yards per game. And he did all that while only playing 5 games so far this season. But now moving into next week, Forrest and the Crimson Tide are ready to take on Utah.
And an exciting new wrinkle. These first-round games are on campus in front of hyped-up and partisan crowds. 2 teams battling for the right to move on to the quarterfinals.
To start this game off, Forrest realizes that he doesn't really juke too much. So he tries to do one here, and it actually ends up preventing him from getting a first down. And that is something that he was looking to work into his game more. But for now, he was fine just picking up big chunks of yardage and helping his team slowly progress down the field bit by bit. And because Forrest was able to make the Utah defense scared of the run, Bama is able to cap off the opening drive with a pass to a receiver in the back of the end zone for a touchdown.
And he's got it. Touchdown. Tied.
The next drive, they decide to hand the ball to Forrest, and he takes advantage of the open hole and starts zooming down the sideline for big yardage. He hit a nice spin move before he got brought down, but unfortunately that drive would stall out. Alabama got back to handing Forrest the ball, and he continued to show why that was a good idea. And before you knew it, Alabama was able to get the ball in the end zone again, and they had a 14-point lead. Forrest teammates did often get frustrated with him from time to time for doing stuff that you're seeing right here.
Are you stupid or something? Stupid is, stupid does, sir.
But Forrest would make up for it on the very next play by taking a screen pass for a first down and then some. Maybe a little bit of Forrest Gump was rubbing off on that Bama quarterback, because he would run the ball real well here on first down, and then make the stupid mistake of turning the ball over this close to the red zone. Now only up 7, Bama started working again to move upfield. And Forrest was able to cap off the drive with a 21-yard touchdown. Now with the opportunity to build the lead, Alabama made sure to keep their foot on the gas. As you can see here, they let Forrest run the ball on fourth down to allow him to pick up the first. And since Forrest seemed to be unstoppable this game, they handed the ball off to him again, and sure enough, he zoomed his way down the field for another touchdown. But the game wasn't quite over yet, because even though Utah didn't score, Bama would get stopped here on third down and would have to punt. And even though Utah did close that gap a little bit, Bama knew that it was only a couple more first downs and they would be moving on to the next game. So they handed the ball off to Forrest and let him do the rest of the work. They were able to take a knee and chew out the rest of the clock. And now Alabama was on their way to the next round to take on the Syracuse Orange.
Site of this year's Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, and of course part of the college football playoff. It's time now for the quarterfinals, with the top 4 seeds, a time to begin their quest toward the national championship.
To start their first drive, Bama showed very early that they are going to be a threat in the passing game, picking up a big first down on 3rd and 7, and then on 3rd and 8, the quarterback dumped the ball off to Forrest, and he tight ropes down the sideline for a long touchdown. And it's funny that Forrest is saluting right there, because later on, Forrest would end up joining the U.S. Army. But on the next drive, Forrest came up clutch for Bama on 3rd down, as he caught this pass that led to a first down. He also did a good job giving his quarterback time to deliver the football on this play.
Here's the snap. Quarterback looking to throw.
And although Forrest didn't end up punching it in here, Alabama found a way somehow. Now up 17, Alabama was determined to put this game away. So they got the ball to Forrest Gump in open space, and he ran down the field for a while before juking out 2 defenders and taking his team inside the red zone. And as they got to the goal line, they let Forrest Gump run the ball in for a touchdown. And at this point, up multiple scores, Forrest had really begun to take over this game. And it got so crazy that you could hear the whole crowd telling Forrest to run at one point as he was running all the way down the field into the end zone for another touchdown. And after this play, Forrest was just taking in the moment, because he knows that he helped his team get 2 games away from a national championship victory. But for now, Alabama had won their first playoff game, and they were all set to take on Ohio State in the Orange Bowl.
Orange Bowl, part, of course, of the college football playoff. We've reached the semifinal stage. One last hurdle to clear before that national championship game.
To start this game off, Forrest is having a pretty hard time getting things going. Getting stopped for a short gain on first down, and then stopping the backfield on second. Luckily, the quarterback was locked in, because he finds an open man downfield who runs in for a touchdown. And it might feel like deja vu when you see it or something, because they did it again on the very next drive. Now tied at 14, Bama started handing the ball off to Forrest so he can help the team control the clock. He did a great job picking up enough yardage to keep the chains moving time and time again. And then Forrest was right there putting his body on the line to make sure his quarterback had enough time to deliver this throw to the end zone for a touchdown. Ohio State did come back out and score, But on this play, Forrest finds an open space upfield and gets open for big yardage on the catch. Unfortunately, the drive would stall out, and Ohio State would only allow Bama to get 3 on this drive. And after Ohio State scored another touchdown, Bama came out swinging, making big plays through the air, and then eventually capping off the drive with a long touchdown. Ohio State did take back the lead, and Bama failed to pick up the first down on this drive, resulting in only 3 points again. But after holding Ohio State to 3, Bama was making their way downfield, and with the help of Forrest Gump, they got deep into the red zone. And on 3rd down at the start of the 4th quarter, they would find Forrest over the middle into the end zone for a touchdown. Now that Bama has lead and possession, they were ready to let Forrest do what he does and milk some of this clock. And on this play, Forrest does an immaculate job picking up the pass rusher and allowing the quarterback to deliver the ball down the field for a big gain. And with Alabama finding a way to get into the end zone again, they know that even if Ohio State returns the favor, it's going to be time to put the ball on the ground and put this game away. And just like that, Alabama was ready to take a knee, and they were moving on to the national championship. And this is the perfect time to start thinking about how far Forrest has come. Don't forget, he only got here just by running through practice someday. He started the season as a 4th-string halfback, and now he's an All-American competing for a national championship.
The ultimate game in the college football season. Everything has built to this, the battle for the national championship and college football immortality, a moment that every young football player grows up dreaming about. And these two teams have survived the expanded playoff grind. They have battled through a regular season, multiple playoff victories, all sorts of challenges and adversity, and they've arrived at this moment, the battle for that precious trophy.
We start this championship game with Forrest on the ground with a nice gain, and then he follows it up with a first down.
He hands it to the back.
Then Forrest took the screen pass on 3rd down and long and found a way to take it down the field and get a first down. And it seemed like the quarterback was looking for Forrest on this drive because he would find him open again. And right as Bama was about to stall out on their drive and have to be forced to kick a field goal, one of the Notre Dame DBs got called for a pass interference.
A penalty marker on the play that should result in a first down.
Then that Bama quarterback found a way to punch it in himself and put the first points on the board for this national championship. And after Notre Dame failed to put points on the board, Bama just hands it off to Forrest so they could try to take control of this game.
Crucial 3rd down play right here.
That Bama quarterback found Forrest over the middle again for a first down.
Quarterback finds a target on the right. It's complete.
And in this game, it felt like Forrest was picking up 10 yards per rush.
He's past the marker.
And the passing game was doing real well in their own way. So that meant all that Notre Dame could do is watch as Forrest Gump and the Crimson Tide punched it in for another touchdown.
And he takes it in for the score. Touchdown, Alabama. So a long, methodical scoring drive.
Notre Dame failed to score once again, so Bama was looking to continue to build this lead. And what better way to do that than to get the ball in the hands of one of the best players in the country, Forrest Gump. And on this play, Forrest does what he does best, because once he catches the ball, before you could even blink, Forrest is in for another Alabama touchdown. Notre Dame failed to score once again, but Alabama didn't care either way, because they were determined to go down the field and score every single time they touched the field. That quarterback trusts Forrest Gump so much that he passed him the ball 3 times in this drive. And I bet looking back, you don't regret it, because Forrest Gump capped off that drive with another receiving touchdown. And even though the offense stalled out the next drive, even the defense was putting up points, because they went on ahead and got a safety. And this was just a bad game for Notre Dame all around, especially for their defense, because Forrest was running all over them. And after a few more handoffs, I mean, this game was uncompetitive and out of reach. And after Forrest Gump was able to jump over the line and into the end zone for another touchdown, that pretty much ended this game. And all Forrest Gump could do was stand there And look at the entire stadium of people who were happier than anybody he's ever seen before. And Forrest didn't understand that what he accomplished was a real big deal. But he definitely felt the love, so he knew it must have been something good. But now with such a big lead, the coach had decided to take Forrest and the rest of the starters out and sat them for the rest of the game until the end, where they can finally celebrate that they won the national championship.
Guys, go out there and leave no doubt. Say mission accomplished.
Well, sometimes a team wins a national championship and they just got hot at the right time. And there's other times when it's been clearly the best team in college football all year. To me,
But Forrest did end up winning player of the game for them 4 touchdowns he had. And as you can see, when we look at the final season stats, Forrest had an absolutely insane season, going for the second most total rushing yards in the entire country. But he also did average the most yards per game. And as a receiving threat, Forrest led all running backs in the entire country with the most receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. Shoot, he even did better than a lot of actual receivers. But Forrest Gump played so good this year, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. But there's this one little boy named Bo from Bessemer, Alabama, and he watched all of Forrest Gump's games. And that boy wanted to be like Forrest Gump so bad, and then some. Because not only did he make it to the NFL, he made it to the MLB too. All that just from seeing Forrest Gump. But Forrest actually ended up graduating from Alabama. And you wouldn't believe that very same day, an Army recruiter had asked Forrest if he wanted to join the Army. And Forrest didn't really have any future plans as of right now, so we figured why not? But they told him that he's going to have to play 1 year of football, because they seen what he did at Alabama. And they think if they make him the focal point of their offense, then Forrest Gump could lead them to the promised land. But before they got to the field, they had to make sure what kind of attitude Forrest had.
Go! What's your sole purpose in this army?
To do whatever you tell me, drill sergeant.
God damn it, Gump! You're a goddamn genius.
They wanted to see if Forrest was the real deal. So the first day of practice, they came out with extra aggression. But he didn't really have too much of a problem with that. Matter of fact, Forrest did so good the Army coaches had decided to change up their playbook a little bit for him. They wanted to get Forrest the ball as much as they can going into their first game against Marshall.
Thundering herd of Marshall and one of the toughest places to play in all of college football.
To start Forrest's season as an Army Black Knight,
The gift to the back.
he wasn't really doing too hot. He was having a hard time getting out on the edge on some plays. Maybe he was just blocking, or he just hadn't played football for a while. Forrest didn't struggle too long throughout the first quarter because he would eventually catch his groove, picking up a big first down here on 4th and 2, zooming around the edge to get close to the goal line, but eventually punching it in for the first touchdown of the season.
And he takes it to the house. Touchdown, Army!
You might have noticed that Forrest is wearing these funny shoes. Well, he got them from his good friend Jenny right before she left off to go somewhere shortly after Forrest joined the Army. So Forrest thought a lot about her going into this season, and he also thought about her on this play.
Run, Forrest, run!
Because before you know it, Forrest Gump is running down the sideline, getting himself in the end zone once again.
Gets in, takes it in.
Now, although Army's offensive line was very lackluster at times, giving Forrest nowhere to run, but this game really was all Forrest. And he's going for long rushing touchdowns, just flying by people. I mean, it looked like a grown man playing pee-wee football out there. He was doing stuff that this military academy had never seen before. The Army would end up winning this game in blowout fashion. Forrest winning player of the game to go along with it. And rightfully so, because 6 touchdowns and 300 yards is absolutely insane. And even looking at the receiving stats, to have 5 receptions for 71 yards, and that definitely ain't too bad for a running back. And the Army figured they might want to pass the ball a little bit to Forrest now too, going into his next game against the ranked opponent, Kansas State.
Family stadium, virtually every man, woman, and child.
The Army did a good start it off pretty rough after getting stopped on 3rd down,
Give you a shot of momentum.
giving the ball back to Kansas State, who already scored.
And short.
But with the help of Forrest Gump, they would eventually get downfield and even get down near the goal line, where they would once again get stopped on 3rd down, but get held to a field goal. But after halftime, it started to look real bad. I mean, it was 21-3, but Forrest Gump could never be stopped all game, because he would eventually break off a huge run that brought this game a little bit closer.
There he goes down the right side. He's at the 10.
Now, they tried to get Forrest involved with the pass game, and it just didn't really seem to be clicking quite yet. And at one point, the coaches tried to have Forrest pass block, and it did not turn out very well.
It's a hit as he fired.
But the Black Knights would continue to fight down the field and get the game back close. But eventually, it was just too much, and the Army went down to Kansas State on this day. Forrest did end up having a great game, but that didn't really matter too much to the Army coaches if they ended up losing. So they knew that if they ever wanted to be ranked, they had to get back on track and win their next game right here against Tulsa.
Welcome to Mikey Stadium in West Point, home of the Black Knights of the Hudson.
To start this game off, Forrest was definitely struggling a little bit, getting stopped early on multiple plays on the first drive, including here on third down. But somehow the Army defense gets the ball right back in great territory. And Forrest makes him pay by setting the tone and getting into the end zone right here. And they actually built a nice little wall for Forrest to run into because they heard about how he used to run through the band lines at Alabama. But everything wasn't peaches and cream because that Army quarterback would end up throwing a pick six. Then at some point the Army found themselves down by 2 possessions. That didn't last too long because when you have Forrest Gump on your team, yeah, I mean, he can close the gap pretty quickly. Even in the passing game, I'm surprised they didn't just put him out there and let him run all the time because he could just run right by people. I mean, he could be the #1 receiver in the country if he wanted to. But he was about to prove that he might be the #1 running back as well because he was absolutely carving up this Tulsa defense. There was even one play where he bounced off a couple guys and he just ran by everybody. That Forrest Gump was so fast. There were some plays where their defense just didn't really know what to do. They started to trust him so much that they were running the ball late in the 4th quarter. And Forrest would still run his way on in for a touchdown, making some of the coaches wonder if they were dreaming or not, because they just couldn't believe what they were seeing. And they definitely weren't dreaming because Tulsa would come back to tie the game up. So they just continued to put the ball in Forrest's hands, and you had to think it was going to pay off big for him. And with Forrest Gump making his way all the way down the sideline once again, he had definitely helped the Army get right back on track after having another huge game, going for over 300 yards and 6 touchdowns once again. And of course, he went on to win National Offensive Player of the Week once again. I mean, really, if you ever think that he wins it, just know that he probably won it. Because throughout the season, Forrest just continued to get better, even upgrading a lot of his abilities. And that was just the kind of thing that would prove useful going into another big game against Icy Vert's Temple Owls. But these Owls don't seem to be awake quite yet, because they're giving up great field position early on the first drive of the game, and Forrest Gump takes advantage of that by scoring a quick touchdown. This Temple team was just not locked in this game. The Army offense was able to score touchdowns even when Forrest was off the field. But old Forrest Gump was definitely having his way this season, and he was making a bigger and bigger impact through the air. But by the 3rd quarter, they announced that Forrest had already rushed for 1,000 yards on this season.
This guy's been so much fun to watch all year long.
I mean, I tried to tell you that Forrest wasn't a regular player. I mean, at this point, he was on pace to have a historical season. And as far as the Owls go, I mean, who gives a hoot? Forrest Gump definitely doesn't, as he helped Army double the Owls' points on his way to another 250-plus yard game, but this time with 8 touchdowns. And with another 140-plus yards through the air, oh yeah, Forrest was starting to become a household name, alright, winning another National Offensive Player of the Week on his way to upgrading another ability. But when you stop and take a look at the Heisman Trophy voting so far, it was clear that Forrest Gump had begun to strike some fear into people's hearts, because he firmly held the lead for the Heisman, and that just wasn't going to change anytime soon. Because these teams that Army were facing, well, they just didn't have the facilities to deal with Forrest Gump. Especially when Forrest's best good friend Bubba, who's been right by Forrest's side since the first day that they both showed up to camp, well, he was perfectly fine blocking for Forrest. And at some point, it felt like Forrest Gump and the Army were just going on a rampage, racking up offensive players of the week, continuously running past guys, getting into the end zone for long touchdowns. Picking up wins against teams that had absolutely no business playing against a guy like Forrest Gump. I mean, shoot, the Army had another ranked game against UTSA, and I'm sorry to spoil it for y'all, but them boys barely even had a chance. Not when Army was communicating real well with Forrest, making sure that he knew his main objective was to keep getting his butt into the end zone. And Forrest, being the kind of man he is, I mean, he just kept doing what he was told. You might be surprised to find out that even in this ranked game against UTSA, Well, they didn't have a single person on that defense that could keep up with Forrest Gump. And it definitely showed as he continued to find his way into the end zone time and time again. But by the end of the game, Forrest Gump had run for over 450 yards with something like 8 touchdowns. And it was just going to keep getting crazier because with the Army, Forrest just kept getting stronger and stronger. And when you look at the stats, it's almost mind-boggling. 30 touchdowns is diabolical.
Jesus H. Christ. This is a new company record.
It's like the Army didn't have no mercy for nobody. They was going to keep unleashing Forrest upon everybody on their schedule, and they were just going to have to see if they could deal with it. And I'll tell you right now, the Air Force couldn't deal with it. I mean, these poor guys were looking like your little cousin at a family barbecue, where you don't got to go much more than 20% to beat them, 35 if you really want to teach them a lesson. But you know what I mean. It was getting real ridiculous out here. Even at times where the games were kind of close, it was never really that close. Because at any time, Forrest Gump was just going to run right by you and win the game for Army. The only thing is, regardless of how many yards Forrest Gump ran, the Army just couldn't find a way to get ranked. But they figured at the very least they could just close out their season strong, and maybe they would have a chance. But they had to take care of business right here against UAB. And I'm not even going to lie to you, UAB was putting up a real good fight against the Army. Forrest Gump found a way to take the lead in this game before UAB was able to tie this game up with under a minute to go. But hey man, like I said, against a team like this, there's only so much you can do to stop Forrest Gump. And although Forrest would not find his way into the end zone on this drive, that Army kicker did a great job sealing this victory and keep their playoff hopes alive despite Forrest not having his greatest game. And it is kind of crazy to think about how 170 yards and 3 touchdowns could be considered a bad game by Forrest standards. But all Forrest was going to do is just keep getting better, upgrading that power. And it was almost like they spoke it into existence because by the next week, the Army was finally nationally ranked. That don't happen a lot for this team. The last time they were ranked before 2018 was 1996. So going into their next game against Eastern Carolina, all they really cared about was keeping that momentum up and making sure that by any means necessary, they came out of there with a win. But Eastern Carolina was not going to make it easy. And they were definitely keyed in on Forrest Gump, stopping him behind the line of scrimmage multiple times throughout this game. But at some point, Army had realized that they were more than just one person, and they were still a team. So they used some other players to help get themselves downfield before trying to give Forrest the ball once again. And in a game as low scoring as this one, I'm not too surprised to see that all it really took was a Forrest Gump touchdown to help put this game away, bringing Army only a couple games closer to possibly getting to the college football playoffs. So going into this Army versus Navy game, they knew all they had to do was just give the ball to Forrest Gump because he was about to get ready to take them places that they haven't been in decades. Out of all the soldiers that were in this stadium on this day, well, Forrest was definitely one of the greatest. And there's no further proof than that than the fact that the entire stadium was rooting for Forrest to run. And surprise, surprise, this Navy defense was no match for an Army offense that had a weapon like Forrest Gump. And even though the game was surprisingly close, Forrest would help his team maintain this lead. And now these Army Black Knights were in a really good position. They had one more game left on their schedule, and if they could win that game, then they would ensure themselves a spot in the college football playoffs. Forrest Gump had started out this game pretty hot like he usually does. He even learned a new move on this touchdown where he jumped over a cameraman. And he figured next time he had the opportunity to, why not try it in the real game? So they tossed it to him and he gets out on the edge, jumps over a guy, and he gets crunched in midair. Charlotte would find himself with the lead before Forrest would find himself all the way into the end zone for another long touchdown. But the thing is, this game wasn't necessarily a regular old game, because Charlotte was really putting a good effort to put an end to Army's season, taking a 2-possession lead before Forrest Gump would find himself into the end zone, helping to give his team a fighting chance. And with the Army season in the palms of the hands of this defense, it just don't even feel right knowing that this is how it could all end. But Charlotte was really driving down the field until the defense finally holds them to a field goal, giving Forrest Gump and this offense another chance. So they start making their way downfield. getting out of bounds, or trying to get first downs to preserve some clock. With the time running out, they had to play Drew up for Bubba to see if he can get into the end zone and win this game for him. But he got stopped inbounds with the clock still running too, so they have to hurry up on the ball, snap it with 2 seconds left, and they need someone to make a play. Luckily, Forrest Gump was right there to catch the ball, and ain't that something? Forrest Gump is right there to help save this season. Out of all their wins this season, this really might have been their best win because of how they stuck together and worked together in order to get this win. And they know with 100% certainty that they're able to walk off this field and into next week with a guaranteed college football playoff bid. But now that the regular season was over, it was time to give Forrest some of the awards that he had earned throughout the year. He won Player of the Year. He was the first Heisman winner for the Black Knights since 1958 when Pete Dawkins won the award. And he obviously won Best Running Back, but he was so good that they gave him All-American twice. And looking at the season stats at the end of the year, this is just absolutely preposterous. How are you going to rush for almost 3 times as many yards as the next guy, while also being the second leading receiver in the entire country at a running back? But this wasn't something that Forrest spent too much time thinking about each week. And he actually spent a lot of time playing ping pong. The coaches told him that it'd be pretty good for his hand-eye coordination, and he was actually getting pretty good at it. Eventually getting to the point where he was able to get his hands upgraded a little bit more. And it was probably going to be useful going into a seemingly tough playoff matchup against Ohio State.
The beginning of this 12-team playoff in front of a home crowd and a raucous environment.
Now, I'll tell y'all boys right now, Ohio State was definitely doing a pretty good job on defense. But let's not forget who we're talking about here. This is Forrest Gump, who finds himself into the end zone twice in the first half. But the hard part about playing good teams now is that everybody on Army was not Forrest Gump, because a pick six was bound to help Ohio State get back some momentum. And they eventually did find a way to come back and take the lead. But that was before Forrest was able to take this pass and make one dude look silly before making the rest of them look like toddlers and getting into the end zone for a touchdown. Some teams throughout the season, including Ohio State, definitely gave Army a good run for their money. But Forrest Gump would keep running all over the field and help put this Ohio State team away, giving them their first win ever in the college football playoffs. But this is not the important part of the story. Matter of fact, I'm just going to go ahead and spoil some of this. Because the Army would pretty much beat the brakes off their next opponent, and even Georgia for a little bit up until the fourth quarter. Where you might be surprised to find out that it wasn't Forrest, but actually one of his teammates that helped get down the field and take the lead. But this Army defense was definitely having a hard time playing against this Georgia offense, as they give the lead right back up. But here comes the interesting part. Because you would think that after Forrest gets down the field and into field goal range for his team, this game should be pretty much over. I can understand running the ball even here on 3rd down. But on 4th down, I was starting to think that the coach was trying to throw the game. Because, that offense was trying to convince him just to kick a field goal to try to win the game. They took a timeout, and they even took a delay of game to try to get the coach to change his mind. And Forrest figured they got this far by trusting in him, so why not trust in them for a change? So they went on and played the down, and y'all will not believe this. Somehow the Army scores a last-second touchdown to get them into the national championship. And the last time the Army got there was almost 80 years ago in 1945. And going into the week, Forrest had to remember something that his mama told him.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
So he wasn't at all surprised to find out that his opponent would end up being Alabama, the same team that gave him the opportunity to play football in first place. And the Army knew that if Alabama got right back to the championship without Forrest Gump, then it was about to be time to strap on their combat boots, because they were going to have to go to war. Starting this game off in the first quarter, Forrest Gump is still playing like he has always played. He even takes this sweep and gets it all the way to the outside and finds himself into the end zone for a touchdown. And saluting the entire crowd as a celebration to show that he's ready for duty. And in this national championship, Forrest Gump was going absolutely ballistic, treating Alabama's defense like they were the UGF Pandas. Even the Army quarterback was able to get himself into the end zone to extend his lead.
And he runs it in for the score. Touchdown.
But Alabama was still Alabama. So as they continued to score more, Forrest knew that he just had to keep doing his part, bringing his team downfield, eventually getting themselves into goal-to-goal territory. And then Forrest Gump did a great job to get down the middle and extend his lead with another touchdown. But Alabama clearly wasn't the type to give up, so it made sense that they would eventually get a few stops. But before it felt like Alabama was getting too many stops, Army found ways to let Forrest get them downfield. And by the third quarter, the Army QB was able to get the ball into the end zone to another player for a touchdown, extending this lead and giving them a nice little cushion. But the thing is about leads against teams like Alabama is that they don't often feel too cushiony for long. And that definitely proved to be the case here in this game, because after this stop on third down, out of nowhere, Alabama had the lead now. And Forrest Gump had found himself fighting his way downfield to try to help his team get the lead back. But on this fourth down, all it took was one bad throw to put this game completely in question. And in another game where the defense was being relied upon to save this season, all Forrest Gump could do was watch as his defense would eventually find a way to give them an opportunity. Now with around a minute left, Army knows exactly what they need to do. Pass the ball to Forrest, get the ball out of bounds, save the clock, and eventually they would be able to find themselves in a good position to win this game. Getting themselves right down near the goal line, where here on 3rd and 1, they try to run the ball and it just doesn't work. But they have no timeouts left, so they have to run hurry up. And they find a way to get this offense back together before the play clock runs out, and are able to snap the ball out 2 seconds left, and they pass the ball right to Forrest, and it's knocked down. Oh my! I mean, I still can't believe it to this day. And Forrest Gump had one of the greatest seasons, if not the absolute greatest season, out of any player ever in college. And it was all derailed in the final moments of the last game of the season by the same team that brought Forrest into college football. And Forrest did have a great game. I mean, he ran for over 200 yards, but this was a shame. But Forrest wasn't too sad about it when he realized that he actually broke a bunch of records for the Army, immediately becoming the best player in the Academy's history. And as far as the final season stats, I mean, like I said before, this is just ridiculous. Almost to the point where one could be unsure if people would even want to watch it. All season long, not only Forrest, but the Army was so surprised that Forrest was able to do so well. Playing against the weaker teams is kind of understandable, but even against the really good teams, Forrest was able to put up 250 yards, 300 yards some games. I mean, earlier in the season, Forrest had some games with 8 touchdowns. But now that the season's over, Forrest does have to go spend some time in the Army. But after he gets out, he does have a couple seasons left of eligibility. Or maybe he can end up going to the NFL. Forrest would go on to do some other things for a while before receiving a letter from the NFL inviting him to the NFL Draft Combine. And Forrest figured he didn't really have much else to do right now, so why not? So he ran his way on over to Lucas Oil Stadium, where he would try and show the scouts what he can do. Starting off with the 40-yard dash, Forrest did just as well as you would expect, running a 4.27 and leading the running backs by far. Then he honestly did pretty weak on the bench and other things, as he got last place in back-to-back drills. He would bounce back in the shuttle though, getting first out of all the running backs. And he did okay in the final drill, earned himself a late first-round grade. But before the NFL draft begins, Forrest tried to do an interview to help raise his grade. They started out with some personal questions, and he didn't really know how to answer some of them. But he would think of something.
The only good thing about being wounded in the buttocks is the ice cream.
They would ask other questions that he really didn't know the answer to, and eventually he would leave this little quiz with a 1 out of 10. But now that it's draft day, Forrest is just chilling at home, waiting to see where he'll get picked. And the Tennessee Titans actually call, telling Forrest that they want him to be on the team. And honestly, that wouldn't be too bad for Forrest. Alabama and Tennessee are neighboring states anyway, so Forrest just tells the coach that he is ready to go. And once Mr. Roger Goodell goes up and officially submits this pick, Forrest Gump officially becomes a member of the Tennessee Titans. And after talking to his coach a lot throughout the week, Forrest is ready to get into his first preseason game against the 49ers. And in this game, Forrest was showing that he could do a little bit of everything. Running the ball real well, who was also a very willing blocker and was making some nice catches out of the backfield. He did a lot of similar things against the Seahawks in the next game, and although through 2 games Forrest was still yet to score a touchdown, it was okay because he only really played the first couple quarters. Before they got into the regular season, Forrest was being asked so many questions to the point where he was up at the podium for too long.
I gotta pay.
But now that they're in the regular season, Forrest Gump and the Tennessee Titans are ready to face off against Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. Forrest was able to make his official debut halfway through the first quarter and immediately was making an impact, breaking off tacklers and picking up multiple first downs on his own on his way into the red zone. But Forrest being a rookie, he was bound to make a mistake. So on a play that seemed like he was about to make a nice pickup, he actually ends up fumbling the ball and it's recovered by Chicago. But things seemed like they were going to be okay because right before the second quarter ended, Will Levis throws a bomb up to a receiver and he's able to take it all the way into the end zone for a touchdown right before the half, making this only a 3-point game, so after halftime, they would have a chance to claw their way back downfield and potentially take the lead. And after Forrest comes up clutch on multiple third down plays, this drive would eventually stall out around the goal line and result in 3 points. Now still tied at 10 late in the fourth quarter, Tennessee needed some big plays, and Will Levis was actually helping to make them. But Forrest was able to get them within the red zone, and then down by the 1-yard line, where Coach would end up taking Forrest Gump out so he can't get a touchdown. And not only does Tennessee not score, but they find themselves in overtime. And here Forrest actually drops the ball on third down, and now Tennessee has to punt. And literally, I don't even know what happened, but all of a sudden, I guess Tennessee comes away with this win, giving Forrest Gump the first W of his NFL career. Going into the following week, the reporters asked Forrest how he'll continue to get better. And he told them about all that time he was playing ping pong and getting better with his hand-eye coordination. So he'll play more in his free time to work on his catching. Another reporter tells Forrest that it's going to be real rainy the next game, but he tells the reporter that he'd been through all kinds of rain in the Army.
Big old fat rain. Rain that flew in sideways, and sometimes rain even seemed to come straight up from underneath.
So in this game against the New York Jets, Forrest Gump was ready to go. Or at least so he thought. Because on the very first drive of the game, he tries to cut inside on this play and gets popped for a fumble. The defender would go on to pick it up and take it all the way to the crib for 6. This Titans offense was definitely struggling this game because they had a real hard time picking up consistent first downs. Eventually, Forrest would help bring them into the red zone, but miscommunication led to Will Levis throwing a pick that ended the drive. Now down by 14, Forrest was trying to make as big of an impact as he could, picking up huge first downs through the air and on the ground. But I don't know if the mayonnaise in his coffee is starting to get to him or something, but Will Levis is making some pretty stupid mistakes, pitching the ball all the way into the backfield where it gets recovered by the Jets. But it can't all be Will Levis' fault, because on this play, Forrest calls for the ball, and it ends up getting picked and returned all the way to the house for 6. And although Tennessee was really trying to do their best to get back in the game, another bad play leads to another pick 6, and the Jets would end up blowing out the Titans 41-17. Forrest had another pretty decent game for a rookie, but he was looking to step it up. So he made sure to upgrade some of his ratings and abilities and continued to work his tail off at practice. By the time Sunday came, he was ready to play in his next game against the Packers. Forrest started out this game hot, picking up multiple first downs on the opening drive of the game. He eventually took a screen pass and zoomed past a bunch of guys and took it into the end zone for the first touchdown of his NFL career. But he wasn't done yet because somehow they got the ball right back in the red zone, and on this 4th down and inches, he scampered his way into the end zone once again for his second touchdown.
Touchdown, Tennessee.
But his impact wasn't only being felt on the stat sheet, because there was times where he would go out there and lay his body on the line to block for his receivers, literally pancaking multiple people. Forrest helped his team move all the way back downfield in the second quarter, making multiple big plays before Will Levis once again makes an absolutely stupid play where he pitches the ball 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage, pretty much ruining the drive. But after getting a defensive touchdown to start the second half, all Tennessee really needs to do to put this game away is just continue to get first downs or even put up points. And eventually that's what Forrest Gump was able to do as he takes this screen pass right here and gets it into the end zone for a touchdown to make this a 28-point game. And after Forrest goes for one of the longest rushing plays of his career so far, resulting in more points for the team. Well, it was definitely over at that point. But Forrest even went on to put another touchdown up for good measure. And he had to make sure that he wasn't crazy or nothing because he almost couldn't believe that he was doing this. The Titans ended up winning this game 41-3, and Forrest had one hell of a game, racking up over 200 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns, and 120 receiving yards. After the game, a reporter had asked Forrest what was the key to his success. But they probably didn't know that Forrest had actually gotten married to his good friend Jenny. But they didn't get to spend too much time together because she would end up dying sometime later. She was really all he could think about lately, so he told the reporters that his wife Jenny was largely what kept him motivated. And with Tennessee going into their next game against Miami, Forrest was looking to help lead them to another victory. They started off this game okay as they were able to pick up some first downs, but eventually the drive would stall out. They got the ball back and Will Levis actually throws a bomb to Calvin Ridley, and he's able to outrun defenders to get into the end zone for the first touchdown of the game.
And they are not going to catch up to him.
The next drive, Forrest was looking to make his impact felt by picking up big gains and big first downs. But again, that drive would stall out, and that theme would be kept up for the majority of the second half, up until the fourth quarter where Tennessee was really driving. Forrest was finally able to get them down near the red zone, where they would hand the ball off to him again and he would punch it into the end zone for a touchdown, pretty much putting this game out of reach. But this season was starting to go by pretty fast for Forrest. Before he knew it, he was in another game against a division rival, the Indianapolis Colts. And although in this game he did struggle pretty early, he would eventually pick it up by helping his team get down near the red zone, and then taking this bubble pass looking thing where he gets it out to the edge and run past all the defenders into the end zone for the first touchdown of the game for Tennessee. Before halftime, Tennessee got another chance to put some points up, but they kept Forrest off the field so they can do a wide receiver type of package, and they actually got it down into field goal range where they were able to put up 3 points. Although Forrest did have some good moments on the ground, in this game the majority of his plays were made through the air, and he was becoming a serious receiving threat. But as great as he seemed to be so far, the plays that he was making didn't seem to be helping his team get back into the game. And eventually they would lose this game 34-10 to the Colts. Forrest had probably his worst game on the ground so far, going for only 40 yards. And he knew he would do his best to get better the next week. But right after the game, his agent had texted him and told him that Bubblegum Shrimp was ready to do a deal. And Forrest knew he had to try to get this thing going because he promised his friend Bubba that he would. So Forrest and his friend Lieutenant Dan went on a little fishing trip before the game.
Take a left!
Okay!
What are you doing? Take a left! Left!
But now that Forrest is back in town, it was time to lock in for a big game against the Buffalo Bills. At the beginning of this game, Forrest was running wild, picking up a well-needed first down after being backed up against their own goal line, and then taking a carry where he just blazes past everybody, running down the sideline and going all the way into the end zone for the first touchdown of the game. Forrest got right back to helping his team get down into scoring position before he actually just takes the ball himself and goes on to score another touchdown. Even hit him with the little crazy legs he used to do. Forrest continued to show just how much of a receiving threat he was. But the Tennessee Titans already had a Hall of Fame receiver on the team. And that is DeAndre Hopkins, who goes into the end zone for a touchdown on this play. Forrest continued to help bring his team down the field on the ground. But on this drive towards the end of the third quarter, he would end up finishing it off with a reception that went into the end zone for another touchdown. And now in the fourth quarter of 2 possessions, the smart thing to do would be to start running some clock. And Forrest definitely did help the Titans do that. But he also helped the Titans get all the way down the field and into the red zone by breaking off a huge run down the left sideline. And finally, Will Levis is able to get his pitches right, and he gets the ball to Forrest, who takes it into the end zone for another touchdown on his day. And at this point, Buffalo was definitely waving the white flag. Josh Allen didn't even want to get up to shake hands with nobody. And Forrest had finished off his day with 265 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns. Forrest continued to get better by upgrading his break tackle before getting into another game against Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions. Tennessee's defense had started off slow by allowing 7 points to Detroit, but their offense seemed to be picking up for their slack by picking up big first downs and eventually getting them down near the goal line, where it was as simple as handing the ball off to Forrest, where he would get in the end zone and tie the game up. They didn't run the ball too much to Forrest in the first half, but towards the end of it, he started gashing this Lions defense with huge runs up the middle. and then made a nice catch up the middle to get his team down near goal-to-goal territory, where Forrest would punch it in for his second touchdown, this time taking the lead. After halftime, Detroit had tied the game up, but the Titans would go right back downfield to get in scoring position. They ended up getting stopped on third down, but they were able to take a lead with the field goal. And then on a play right as the third quarter was ending, Forrest wasn't even paying attention, but somehow the Titans actually score a touchdown to take a 10-point lead. Detroit did end up scoring a touchdown, and Tennessee failed this third down conversion, which meant that Detroit would have an opportunity to get the ball back and take the lead. And lo and behold, look what we have here. Detroit not only goes down and takes a touchdown to take the lead, but they get the 2-point conversion also, and on this play, Forrest calls for the ball on this play, and it ends up getting picked off and returned all the way to the crib, effectively ending this game. Tennessee would end up losing this game 36-29, but Forrest didn't really even want to think about it anymore. He just wanted to get ready for his next game against the New England Patriots. Tennessee did end up getting themselves into Patriots territory on this opening drive, but it stalled out right here on third down. At the end of the first quarter, Will Levis probably was still hungover from the mayonnaise cocktails, but Forrest doesn't really make it any better because he just shoves Jabril Peppers and he gives him an open lane to run all the way downfield and into the end zone for a pick six. Now down by 11, Tennessee needed to make a play urgently before they fall behind too far in this game. Luckily for them, having Forrest Gump on their team made that goal so much more easier, as they get him the ball here and he just bulldozes his way into the end zone for a touchdown. He even had a play where he just runs past everybody and got into the end zone on a 55-yard rushing touchdown.
And he's going to score. Touchdown, Tennessee!
I was running.
Now in the fourth quarter, down by 7 points with around 2 minutes to go, Will Levis continued to use his safety valve to help get them in scoring position. And when they got there, they gave the ball to Forrest for his third touchdown of the day to tie the game up. After the Patriots failed to score any points, all Tennessee really has to do is just get into field goal range. And with the help of Forrest Gump, they don't have too hard of a time doing that. Tennessee would end up squeaking this game out 27-24, and Forrest had an incredible game going for around 150 yards rushing and receiving. Forrest did so good that after the game, he had reporters asking him all kinds of questions.
Why are you doing this?
I just felt like running.
Throughout the majority of this season, Forrest didn't seem like he ever wanted to stop running, because Forrest Gump really just never stopped making plays. It didn't matter how you tried to get the ball to him, because once it was in his hands, he was always going to be a threat to score and to put up a crazy stat line on your team. About halfway through the season, Forrest had gotten around 1,300 yards, and it still didn't seem like he had plans of stopping anytime soon, as he would continue to run all over opponents, just like you see here against the Houston Texans, and you'll definitely need players like Forrest Gump to beat teams like that. You'll also need some insanely lucky plays, kind of like what you're seeing right here, and that kind of stuff should help you get the job done. The Forrest Gump-led Tennessee Titans would continue their rampage throughout the NFL, picking up some very well-needed wins off the back of Forrest Gump's great performances. The scary part was that Forrest was getting better each week, even getting his break tackle up to a 99. As Forrest Gump continued to lead the Titans to domination over their opponents, it never really seemed to get old for the state of Tennessee. Because although they did just have Derrick Henry, Forrest Gump might have been the fastest running back that they've had since Chris Johnson. And we all know what kind of player he was. And Forrest was having an incredible season so far. But now it was time to finish out the rest of the regular season, starting right here with the Indianapolis Colts. To start this game, Forrest Gump was continuing the domination that he had going on throughout the season, picking up a big first down, and then they handed the ball right back to him in the red zone, and he was able to take the ball into the end zone for a touchdown. And for the first time this season, we're starting to see signs that Forrest might win MVP. But even the potential MVP struggles at times as he gets stopped right here in the backfield. You couldn't stop Forrest for too long though, because on a play right before the half, Forrest was able to bring his team all the way downfield right at the 1-yard line, allowing them to score a field goal. The third quarter ended up being a stalemate, but in the fourth quarter, they had Forrest Gump playing wide receiver. And you wouldn't believe that Forrest just ran right by the cornerback and got open in the end zone for another touchdown. And luckily for Tennessee, that was all they needed to put this game away. And Forrest would go on to have another 100-yard rushing and receiving game. Going into the next game, Forrest's defensive coordinator tried to warn him about some guy named Foyesade Oluokun. Forrest really didn't even know who he was, and just focused on ending off his incredible season that he had going on. To start this game off, Forrest was actually being chased by the Aluakon guy, but he broke off his tackle before stepping out of bounds. And maybe Aluakon should have been on the area on this play, because Forrest takes his ball all the way into the end zone for a touchdown. And with the Jaguars being 6-9, this seems like it should be a pretty easy game. But it didn't seem to turn out that way, as Forrest actually got stopped in the backfield on the next drive for a safety. He did fight back though and continued to pick up some pretty huge chunks of yardage, eventually even getting this Tennessee Titans team down by the goal line. But Will Levis, for the first time all season, finally takes a read option himself, and it turns out to be beneficial as he gets into the end zone for another touchdown. But it's too bad that Forrest Gump didn't play defense, because they were now letting Jacksonville score as many points as they wanted. Out of nowhere, they had the lead with 23 points. So Forrest was doing everything he could to get his team back in the game. And he don't even do it a lot, but he took a guy's ankles and stiff-armed another guy to the ground on the way to a big gain. Forrest knew with the end of the third quarter coming, he had to make something happen. So he was out there making defenders look silly, and even took a swing pass on this play before absolutely bulldozing a guy into the end zone for another touchdown on the day. And after he finally activated his X Factor for the first time all season, Forrest was looking impossible to bring down. He helped move the team down the field, where they ended up passing the ball to DeAndre Hopkins, and he took it into the end zone for a touchdown to cut this lead down. And then towards the end of this game, they didn't even have Forrest in. But luckily, Will Levis is able to find a guy downfield who brings it all the way into the end zone for a touchdown to finally take the lead. But I guess Trevor Lawrence turned into Joe Montana on this day, because Jacksonville went right down the field in 30 seconds, scored, took the lead, and actually won the game. Forrest almost couldn't believe that they had lost that game. And although he did play well, it still hurt, and showed Forrest that Tennessee definitely had some real vulnerabilities going into the playoffs. But in the final week of the regular season, Forrest Gump had led the Tennessee Titans to another division victory over the Houston Texans, winning the game 24-21 after Forrest Gump puts the entire state of Tennessee in his backpack, and it actually knocked the now 8-9 Texans out of the playoffs. And although the Titans are expecting to play the Buffalo Bills in the first round of the playoffs, Forrest's mama always did tell him that life is like a box of chocolates, because he never knows what he'll get. But in the wild card round of the playoffs, Forrest Gump and the Tennessee Titans would get to play Mike Tomlin, Russell Wilson, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. To start this game off, Tennessee is already down 7-0, but Forrest Gump is making plays to help drive his team downfield. Except for the fact that he let a pass hit his face mask and fall right to the ground on third down. Luckily, Pittsburgh didn't make anything of it, and Forrest could get right back to doing his job. He took a swing pass on this play and absolutely annihilated a guy before bulldozing his way into the end zone for the first touchdown of his postseason career. And with Will Levis delivering dimes like he was on this play to Calvin Ridley, Tennessee was bound to put up some more points. And it was as easy as a pitch and catch to Forrest Gump, who got it into the end zone for another touchdown on the day to tie this game up. But on a play where Forrest was assigned to block TJ Watt, he just decides not to. And the next couple plays didn't get any better because now nobody wanted to block, and Levis is brought down for a sack fumble. Now down 7 points with a little over 3 minutes left, Tennessee's season was starting to look like it could potentially come to an end. But that would not happen today so long as Forrest Gump could help it. And he definitely did help it by getting them down near the goal line, and then eventually went out for another little swing pass and got into the end zone for another touchdown on the season, tying this game up and bringing Tennessee back in this game. And Pittsburgh literally gave the ball right back to Tennessee on the next play. It was almost like a miracle because right then and there, Tennessee goes on to throw another touchdown pass to take the lead, meaning all they had to do was just get a defensive stop and they would be moving on to the next round. So the defense goes out there and does their best job to give the game away, because Pittsburgh scored a touchdown and got a 2-point conversion. So now Tennessee has to score with 20 seconds left, and they probably would have here, but Will Levis doesn't throw Forrest the ball. And then for some reason, the coaches decided that it was best to take Forrest out the game, and Forrest Gump, the MVP of the league, is forced to watch from the sideline as his team finishes out the rest of their season by taking a loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers in this wild card round. And Forrest Gump is absolutely sick about losing this game. Tennessee was looking like the Baltimore Ravens in the playoffs, forgetting to run the goddamn ball. After the game, reporters were asking Forrest questions about what was going through his head after taking such a tough loss.
I'm pretty tired. Think I'll go home now.
Forrest did not show up to the Pro Bowl Skills Challenge even though he was one of the most voted players. He got a call from Tyreek Hill telling him that he won the MVP award, and Forrest was real happy and appreciative. I mean, he even told Tyreek that one of his 27 kids could possibly win the MVP too one day. And looking at the stats, Forrest obviously had one of the best seasons you'll ever see from a running back, getting 2,000 yards through the air and on the ground. And along the way, he actually broke quite a few NFL records for the season. By the end of the season, the Kansas City Chiefs had paid off the refs to win another Super Bowl, but as you see, Forrest won a bunch of awards including Offensive Player of the Year, MVP, and Rookie of the Year. But although Forrest had a real good season, he doesn't know how much longer he really wants to play in Tennessee, especially with a quarterback who drinks mayonnaise with his coffee. So he decides to talk to one of his buddies that he met from just running around one day, who just so happens to play in the NFL. Forrest tells his friend Bobby that maybe they'd win more if they played on the same team. So if you want to see that happen, get this video to 1,000 likes. And be sure to subscribe to the channel down below and let me know down in the comment section what else you guys want to see. If you got to the point in this video, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. I hope your college and NFL teams won this weekend, and other than that, I'll catch you guys next time.